The Leafs take a pivotal game 5 with a come-from-behind win over Tampa Bay. Let's break it all down, boys, and chat about what a performance like this means for Toronto moving forward and what this could do for this squad on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHL PA, and a special guest today. We've got Tony Ferrari joining us once again, NHL Draft prospect, guru with the hockey news, also writes for Sports Illustrated. We're going to chat about the Maple Leafs and that amazing victory, come from behind win. We are all super pumped up about that one. But also, Tony, you're here, so we might as well get into do a little draft talk, considering that we had the draft lottery go down earlier tonight, and so we can kind of get into some draft conversations in a little bit. But let's get right into this, guys, because, man, I don't know about you, but I wasn't feeling so hot through 20 minutes. Dave, you were actually at Real Sports tonight, so before we kind of get into it, set the mood about of what it was like after the first period when the Leafs go into the period down 2-0 and we're playing like absolute garbage.
Funny enough, sorry, voice is a little troublesome, but we had Rick Vive come for the first
nice.
to come and say hi to everybody at the VIP party. Mood was kind of it was somber. People were just like, we're just watching Game 4 all over again. Rick Vive says, "Don't worry, they got this. They got this. Believe." Literally, as he's walking out, he's telling everybody, chip her up. Things are going to be different. Rick Vive was right.
Vive was right, and things did kind of change. What do you think was the turning point in that game, Tony? Was it, Jack Campbell and the conversation he had with Jason Spezza and him making a couple of big saves after going down to Cobb? Or was it perhaps the penalty that the crowd seemingly got called on Steven Stamkos, which allowed Toronto to really start gaining possession and really start to put pressure on Tampa Bay? What to you was the turning point in this game?
For me, it was the first goal that goes in off Tavares' foot. And I think everything that led up to that obviously was really important. Like you said, the Spezza conversation with Campbell, the crowd, and the penalty on Stamkos and everything. But finally having that one bounce go your way, especially having it go your way for John Tavares, who's had such a, let's be honest, he's had a slow series. So having that one bounce go the Leafs' way, go John Tavares' way, it felt like, okay, we can breathe. And from that moment on, they started really picking it up, and they basically evened out the shots throughout the game. And that's really where it kind of kicked off, is after that first period, the Leafs were the better team for the most part.
You know what's awesome? Like that last 10 minutes of the second period, I would say the best stretch of hockey that we've been able to enjoy throughout this game. Most entertaining 10-minute stretch of the entire series, I would say. You know what happened in that 10 minutes? There was no penalties in that 10 minutes, and it was just great pace, chances back and forth. Toronto was able to get in rhythm, and they were able to put pressure on the Bolts, and then, they would get a couple of opportunities. Nick Paul with a couple of chances there, and Soupy had to come up big to keep it at just a one-goal game. It really started to open up, and the game was there was just finally a pace to it. And it was so entertaining. And then it just carried into the third period. We've got 4-on-4 play. The Maple Leafs able to score two quick ones. Morgan Rielly, which God's work by John Tavares on that goal. Finally, he did something in this series. Yes, he got the goal earlier in the game, but as you said, a little bit of puck luck. That one was him doing some work down low and then spotting Morgan Rielly for the tying goal. And then William Nylander also joining the party a little bit with the initial go-ahead goal. And the first lead change of the entire series was on that goal. the main overall theme for tonight and the biggest difference between the back half of that game and what we've seen in a lot of this series, the big boys came to play. Did they ever?
I think the big thing was the 4-on-4, getting that more of that open ice, because the Leafs had such a trouble getting to the middle of the ice, just getting anything. And like Tampa was all collapsing into the middle of the ice there. The Leafs are struggling so hard to get anything going. Once things opened up a bit more, that kind of just that open ice just made such a huge difference, especially on that play for Tavares.
Yeah.
Like just not accounting, like Tampa not accounting for Riley there open.
Yeah,
in
it
the
just
slot.
creeps down low. Boom. Feed him out in the slot.
Like, I don't think that happens if you're at 5-on-5 personally. And then obviously Nylander too, getting, after that breakaway where he got stopped by Vasilevsky, he got his revenge with that beautiful goal. Just could not have put in a more perfect spot.
Just a wicked shot.
Bill Nye, the wrist shot guy, coming up clutch tonight. That's for sure. But I don't think the game that Auston Matthers had too, like this is he's arrived, right? He's finally checked into the playoffs in this game here. And it really, to me, all stemmed on, and you guys will probably remember this because this, to me, this is like a sub-turning point for me in this game, and more so for him. He won a puck battle. It was a loose puck battle in open ice too, not even in the board along the boards or anything like that, but a loose battle on that power play that they ended up scoring on. And he wins that, keeps on pressure, and then they just, from there on out, kept the pressure on, and then wave after wave after wave after wave. He started to throw his body around, led the team with 7 hits tonight. He started to finally go and rip pucks off guys. He was being that defensive, big-bodied centerman that we had seen from times this year with Auston Matthers, the MVP level stuff. And then he goes and he just, crunches Mikhail Sergachev to get the crowd into it. Like, this guy, the game that he had, I would say, is probably the best playoff game that he has had in his career. And that was a big reason for it. And it was all capped off with a beautiful game-winning goal and an unreal celly to boot.
Yeah, like Matthews' arrival in this game, like every once in a while he has these games where I go, oh, that's a Lindros game. Like that's a game where
I was thinking Mario Lemieux, but yeah, Lindros,
exactly. Same thing, right? He is asserting his dominance physically. He's asserting his dominance as a skill player. He's asserting his dominance as a skater. And he did all of that in this game. He was just the best player on the ice, bar none at times. And his ability to kind of, like you said, get in there physically and throw those hits. I thought him laying out, like crushing Sergachev along the boards and then just calmly skating away and going right onto the bench. Like it was absolutely nothing to him.
Yeah.
And stuff like that is what's going to really make this team take this team over the top. And if Matthews can do that in the next game, and hopefully it's only the next game, then I think this is a team that can actually make it a serious run.
How much of it do you think was the fact that for the first time all series, Michael Bunting looked healthy and looked engaged, and he was, in there making some stuff happen to allow, Matthews and Marner to do what they've done. Like that line looked tonight like they did for a good stretch of that regular season. And it's because Michael Bunting finally also kind of came to play tonight.
Yeah, I think he provided, he kind of just perfected that trio like we've seen all season long. Like they weren't bad when he wasn't up there at the beginning, but it just, there was something missing for a lot of it. And even to allude to what Tony said about with Matthews, we kind of brought this up in the pregame talking that he needed to be engaged physically because that's how you get into these games. That's how you get into the intensity of the moment is by getting into it physically. And he did that perfectly. Even Marner did it too. Like, I think near the end there, he stood up, was it Kucherov at the
blue line? Yeah.
Like, that's what you need. That's what you need. Those are the plays you need to make in order to win. And I think once they put Bunting on that line, it just seemed like everything fell into place for that top line.
There was a comment that was made from John Cooper post game tonight. I want to get your thoughts on it. He came out and he said, "We're not really making them earn it. We're kind of giving it to them." Before I weigh in on my thoughts on that comment there, that quote from John Cooper, Tony, why don't you start? What are your thoughts on that one?
I think that's John Cooper being a good coach. I think it's him kind of letting his guys know, like, you still have the chance to go out and win this series because you're the better team in his eyes. And I think it's a good on him for being the coach. But I think something Keith said after the game too was really important. And he's like, not much of this game is going to matter unless we finish it, unless we do the thing.
Yeah.
So I think both coaches after the game had comments what I'd expect from each of them. Cooper's trying to tell his team that you're still the better team, actually play like it, and Keefe's telling his team, hey, we haven't done anything yet.
Right. Dave, what do you make of those comments?
Yeah, I just think that I don't know if he's trying to get into the Leafs' head a little bit here and trying to make them, trying to rile them up a little bit. But he's been putting even going into the game, he said, "I know our guys are gonna be fired up. I don't know about the Leafs." Like he's kind of he's providing great theater. I will say this: he's providing a great theater. If you're a Leafs fan, you're looking for someone, as the villain in this series. It's probably John Cooper right now, based on the comments he is making.
Yeah, he's throwing out some chirps. He said the same thing after game 1. He's like, that was a gimme. We gave that to them, right? And they lose tonight, and he's like, we're not making them earn it. We're kind of giving it to them again. And the reason why I sit here, and I understand what he's doing, it's kind of a gamesmanship type of thing, but like, let's be honest here. That's just flat out not true in tonight's game specifically. You look at the back half of that game, Toronto just completely outworked Tampa Bay tonight. They surprisingly, they wanted it more. And that's kind of what people have been saying all along. It's like Tampa looks like they want it more. They're going harder into corners. They're battling harder. They're blocking shots. You got guys like Stammer laying out for blocks, and they want it. It's a team that's tasted the championship, and they want to get back there. And tonight, it seemed like Toronto kind of flipped the script a little bit, and they wanted it. It's as simple as that to me. It really is. Toronto, in that second half of the game where they really started to pressure this squad and kind of tilted the ice into their favor, they flat out outworked Tampa Bay, and they went out there, and really it was the big boys that did it. And all along, that's what we've been waiting on. I think, had completely shut down Auston Matthers in Tampa Bay. He had like a 29% expected goals, like a 23% expected goals against Hedman in Tampa Bay. 89% tonight. Outchanced them 8-1 out there on the ice. So they came to play. They outworked Tampa Bay. They wanted it, and they got it. And I think that is a massive positive for the Maple Leafs heading into Game 6, which will be down in Tampa. Before we go any further, guys, why don't I tell our good folks about one of today's show sponsors, and that's Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand that their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. And why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in there. How'd you hear about us box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano, got Dave Morassutti, my co-host, with me, and special guest tonight is Tony Ferrari from the Hockey News, also writer for Sports Illustrated. We are breaking down the Leafs 4-3 victory over the Tampa Bay Lightning, and after that one, boys, I feel a lot better with about this squad. And it seems like there is an unsung hero amongst the group, and we shouldn't really be surprised, realistically. But I don't know if you guys, were able to catch a glimpse at a lot of the post-game chatter. But Jason Spezza apparently had some words to say in between the first and second period and said, we got to find another level, boys, or we're heading home. Let's get this thing going. And that's exactly what happened. How big has Jason Spezza's presence been with this squad the last few games here?
I think it's been huge. I think we look at a guy like Jason Spezza, and over the last few years, the Leafs have tried to have that veteran guy on the lineup, whether it be Marleau or Thornton or whoever it is that going back the last few years, even going back to a guy like Ron Hainsey. They've always liked to have that graybeard who wants to inspire the team and wants to be able to kind of step up and vocalize in a situation like this. And I go back a few years ago, and it was Patrick Marleau in the playoffs that said something, and I think it was one of the Boston series that inspired a comeback in one of those games. So it's something that I think the Leafs do pretty smartly, and I think Jason Spezza is a guy that's done that for the last couple of years, even with some of the other veterans on the team. So having a guy that, as we saw, he went and talked to Jack Campbell, calmed him down a little bit, goes in the dressing room in the intermission, calms the team down, and gets them going. It's invaluable having the experience of a guy like that, especially one who, let's be honest, Jason Spezza probably knows like he may not have another shot at winning a cup.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And it was a bit of a, I don't want to say controversy that Spezza returned to the lineup for Game 5 tonight, but there was some chitter chatter about perhaps they want a little bit more grit back in the lineup with either a Simmons or a Kyle Clifford. Clearly, that you don't have that conversation today or tomorrow, really, because it turned out that it worked, and Jason Spezza was a big part of it off the ice, which helped that. But another player who got a lot of scrutiny going into tonight's game for being put back into the lineup was Justin Holl. Do you think the Holl doubters have been silenced after tonight's game, you think, Tony?
I think they've been silenced temporarily. I think the Holl doubters, and I think I count myself along with those people who do think Timothy Liljegren's a better player overall. But Justin Holl had a really good night tonight. I was going to bring him up if you didn't, because I think for everyone harping on him today and yesterday as they have, including kind of myself being a little not upset, but like almost like, come on, like we know he's in there because of the comments from the last game. He kind of forced his hand to keep him in there after having to defend him in the press conference there. But
answer the bell.
But he answered the bell. He had a good game. Justin Holl was really, really good tonight. It was above 50% in the possession, above 50% in Corsi and shot share and everything. So like he had a decent enough game. So you know what? If Keefe wants to run him again in the next game, it makes sense because there is that risk of all the penalties again. And Justin Holl does grade out pretty well in the penalty kill.
Yeah, I think also when you look at Justin Holl, you gotta love the fact that it's a guy who has been crapped on in this fan base the last couple of days. Yet Sheldon Keefe believes in this guy so much that he's got him out there killing off the final minute of a 1-goal hockey game, and he believes in this guy so much. And he had a big clear in like the final 20 seconds or so. Big time clear to kind of ice the game in a way. And that's probably really is a big thing for him. And Sheldon's like, yes, thank you so much, Holl, for making that happen. But yeah, I thought that he had a great game. So I definitely wanted to bring that up a little bit. All right, let's get to our 3 stars on the night. Dave, why don't you start with your 3rd star? Tony can go after him, and then I'll go after you. So Dave, who's your 3rd star?
So my 3rd star, I'm gonna go with I've had so many to choose from. I'm gonna give it to William Nylander. I thought he had, it was a slow start for him, but I thought he had a really good game. I mean, obviously scoring goal helps, but setting up Tavares for that goal, and then he just was all over the ice. All over the ice. He was calm. That one play I was worried about when he got just absolutely crunched by Cal Foot in front of the net and got up.
Taking it hard to the net.
He took his lumps, and he was. I felt like it woke him up a little bit too. He just took it to another level after that play. So I thought he deserves a bit of a shout out.
He almost scored off that too. I don't know if you guys know that. Like, almost was able to bat that in on like a second opportunity, but he got hit by Cal Foot and threw off his hand-eye a little bit. But wouldn't that have been something if he was able to score and kind of bat that in? And that would have been awesome. Tony, your 3rd star tonight.
My 3rd star goes to Jack Campbell. Just his, and it almost feels bad. I almost feel bad saying Jack Campbell is a 3rd star because he was so important in this game.
You should feel awful, actually.
Yeah, really. And it's only because I as I typically do, I'm going to give William Nylander the 2nd star because I love him so much and he had such a good game. But no, with Jack Campbell for the 3rd star, he made so many big saves. He kept them in it after going down 2-0. And even when they got back tied up 3-3 when Tampa scored to tie it up, Jack Campbell made a bunch of big saves after that. Specifically, there was one on the breakaway that was a save that I was like, that might be the one that wins the game for the Leafs right now because it was late. It was in the Yeah, it was in the third period, and the game was tied. You needed that save. Jack Campbell made that save, and in years past, that's not a save the Leafs get. So I think that's a big reason why Jack Campbell deserves all the love tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, which is why he shows up a little bit higher in my 3 stars. I actually did. I wanted to give the third star straight up to Jason Spezza for being a leader, man. Like it's not always. I guess it's funny in an age of analytics. I suppose intangibles kind of get thrown out the wayside. But I mean, being a leader like that, talking Jack Campbell, settling him down, getting him, and afterwards, Campbell was lights out after that point. Which I got to think that had something to do with it, kind of calming the jitters after allowing 2 quick ones, being down to Cobb early in that game, especially coming off being yanked the night, the game before. And then, what we heard in the locker room post game, he laid someone out too, had a big hit in the corner. I'm trying to remember who it was or along the boards, but he laid somebody out. And I was like, okay, Jason, welcome. Like he was just doing a little bit of everything tonight. So, although he didn't quite hit the score sheet, you still got to get some love for those guys with the intangibles. So I am going to give Spezza the third star. Tony, you said Willie was your second star. Dave, who was your second star?
My second star was Jack Campbell. He there was just time and time again, there was moments in that game where a Tampa guy got in the slot, clean chance on that, and there was Jack Campbell making the save. Like calm, cool, collective. Maybe not calm if you ask some people, but just he's been rock solid in these. Like without Jack Campbell, I don't think the Leafs are in this series, especially in this game. Like this is the goaltending you need to win in the playoffs. And Jack Campbell's brought it, and I think he did exactly that tonight. I don't think the Leafs win if Jack Campbell doesn't play the way he does.
I agree with you, man. I completely agree with you. I had him as my second star as well for a lot of the same reasons. He just made so many timely saves. Like after those first 2 goals went in, he was rock solid. I know that McDonough ends up getting one late to tie it, but I mean, he made so many grade A chance stops. I mean, Nick Paul had 3 breakaway chances himself. The one he made on Kucherov also with the shoulder, I thought was just like outstanding to make that stop, a little bit later in the game. He was just phenomenal, honestly, from, I guess, like the 13-minute mark onward. He was just lights out, man. So, yeah, second star, I'm giving that one to Jack Campbell. First star of the game, Tony?
It's Auston Matthers, and it's because of everything he was doing. And there was one point, I think, early in the game, I think it was the second, just in the start of the second period, I'm like, man, I think it was after the first goal, I'm like, the Leafs are starting to come back. Everyone feels like they're here. But Auston Matthers still feels a step off almost. He's making some stuff happen kind of away from the puck, but he's not doing everything that he normally does with the puck. And then there was all these little things that he was doing with the physical game along the boards, the stick lifts, the takeaways, all of these little things that he was doing that were just exemplifying how good this player is, even when he's not scoring goals. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, he makes the play and scores the goal to win the game. And the huge celly and everything. This guy has arrived. I think we said it earlier, whether it's Mario or Lindros, whoever you want to compare him to, this guy is making a case for being the best player in the world. And if he can lead the Leafs on a deep run, the conversation is going to become even more real across the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to give it to the top line just as a whole.
Yeah.
Like that line tonight was outstanding. And I mean, in my opinion, that was a pass off of Vasilevsky's pads.
100%.
That Marner had to set up the Matthews goal, right? Yeah, that's what they teach you.
I think even Matthews mentioned in the post-game presser with Bukauskas, he said there was just incredibly high IQ play by Mitch making the pass there.
That's exactly what it is.
And it's incredible.
Yeah, and like knowing, go in, it's a 2-on-1, you shoot, the defenseman's taking you, so you're not going to have to worry about the D-man clearing out the garbage. Shoot it low, shoot at his pads, and hopefully Matthews can pounce on the rebound and put in the back of the net. And that's exactly what happened. But if you look at these guys' numbers tonight, at 5-on-5 as a line, Bunting, Matthews, and Marner, a 75% Corsi rating. They ended up with outshot their opponents 10-4, outchanced their opponents 13-3 tonight, and had an 89% expected goals Yeah, expected goals as a line, as a trio. And that's just a complete opposite of what we saw in games 3 and 4. And look, they ended up playing like 5, 6 minutes against the Sorelli Point and Hedmans. Like, it's not like they completely got away from it. Half of their time spent at 5-on-5 were against those guys, and it didn't matter. They still were out there and they were contributing, and they ended up on the positive end of the the analytics sector of the score sheet. And you just got to kind of take your hat off to these guys who found that extra gear that everyone knew was in them, right? Like, they did it all season long, and it kind of went away here in the last couple of games, but something clicked, and they really got it going and propelled them to victory at the end of the day. Dave, I'm assuming you also have Auston Matthers as your number one star. Do you have anything else you want to add there?
I mean, Auston Matthers, this is what stars are supposed to do, right? In high pressure moments, they're the ones who are supposed to be calm and built for the moment. I think that's what we saw. The unfortunate play that led to the tying goal by McDonough, which, I mean, absolute rocket of a shot. But to have the thought process, the composure to not let that just totally deflate you. You come back and you score the game-winning goal. That's the true mark of a star player, in my opinion. And I'll also say with the Jason Spezza speech, this guy is going to be an NHL head coach one day for sure.
Probably.
Maybe with the Leafs one day. Who knows? Wouldn't hate that. I'm sure a lot of the guys on the Leafs wouldn't hate that. But I just think that, we're seeing the maturity and the composure of these star players really start to break through. And this is a huge moment for them because it's only going to get tougher from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they're all saying the same thing. The job's not done yet. They still got one more to win over the next 2 games in order for their first of, many goals that they have the rest of the way, with the final goal obviously being getting pissed drunk drinking out of the Stanley Cup. I think that's the final end goal there for these guys. It was Pierre-Edouard Bellemare who got absolutely decked by Jason Spezza, by the way. That was awesome to see, I do have to say. All right. Why don't we actually, before we do, any final comments that you guys want to make on tonight's game? Anyone you want to give some love to, or any play specifically? Final comments. Tony, why don't you start?
My final comment is let's end it in 6 because I really don't want to deal with the stress of a game 7. Just let's do this the easy way for once. Once, please.
But do you feel confident going into game 6 though? Like,
I do.
After that win, I mean, they really took it in that second half and took their game to another gear. If they could do that again in game 6, they got a pretty good shot, no?
No, I have a ton of confidence in this team because when you look at the way they've handled these games, even in the losses, they've been able to find a way to still crack Vasilevsky. And I think that's important because the Lightning are a team that we've all heard about Vasilevsky's record after a loss. He's, I think, 15-0 now, 16-0 now. Generally doesn't allow more than 2 goals, and the Leafs have scored 3 or more on him every game. I think that's really important for the Leafs, knowing that this isn't a guy that is going to be able to kind of shut the door and beat us because we can beat him still. So it's all about kind of keeping the puck out of their own net and then letting the offense generate from there. But this team has been doing that for the most part at 5-on-5, being the better team throughout the series, in my opinion.
When there is 5-on-5 play.
And that's the exact problem.
Which we did see at like the back half of the game when the Leafs took over. It was because there was a majority of it was played at 5-on-5, right? Like it just simply was. Dave, final comment for you.
TJ Brody and Jake Muzzin, that pairing was huge tonight. Like that pairing gives me so much confidence when they're on the ice. I'm not worried about what's going to happen in the defensive zone when they're out there. I thought they were instrumental in this game, so I want to see it continue.
I mean, we've spoken glowingly, I guess, about 2 pairs so far. Let's give some love also on a bounce back performance from Mo and Lyubushkin. I thought that they also had a pretty good game themselves after not so great effort in game 4. So defensively, like those guys, probably rolling with them again for game 6 based on how the defensemen played tonight. All right. Why don't we take one more break? When we get back, We had the draft lottery go down today. Now, the Maple Leafs aren't involved in the draft lottery because they're involved in a tournament that a little bit better. It's a tournament that allows you a chance to win the Stanley Cup, something that the Montreal Canadiens were unable to get into this year. Therefore, they got into the lottery. Good for them. They won the lottery, but the Leafs still with a chance to win the Stanley Cup, the ultimate goal. When we get back, Tony, our draft expert, is going to tell us all about this year's draft. How good can Shane Wright be? Is he the number one pick? Is that the guy who the Montreal Canadiens should take? That and more when we return. But first, Dave, why don't you tell the good folks about our sponsor, Built Bar?
Yep, summer's coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. Throw them in your bags, your kids' backpacks. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you are fueled for your summer adventures. Best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. Have you tried the Built Puffs yet? We're going crazy for the Puffs. They're coming in crazy flavors like banana cream pie and even churro. Who doesn't want a protein bar that tastes like a churro? And guess what? They're only 140 calories. I'm signed up already for them. So if you're not signed up by now, I don't know what you guys are doing. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. If you compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozen net carbs, Built Bar is clearly the best choice for you. So make sure you go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. So that is promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off at Built.com.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. I've got Dave Morassutti, my co-host. We are your hosts here at Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leafs podcast, which you can find wherever you get your podcasts from. You can also find us also up on YouTube. And if you're watching currently on YouTube, go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment below about your thoughts on tonight's game and how you're feeling going into Game 6. Have to go down to Amalie Arena. Didn't go quite so well in Game 4, but do you feel better about it going into Game 5? Tomorrow, we're going to preview that game as well, so make sure you subscribe so that you can come back and get that daily Leafs content. We're going to pivot a little bit, though. The draft lottery was tonight, and it's perfect timing having Tony on the podcast. Prospect writer, a longtime prospect writer for the Hockey News and for Sports Illustrated. So the Montreal Canadiens had the best odds to win it, and they did win it. The Devils moving up a few spots. They'll pick second. They seem to always get so lucky, don't they? The Devils. Here it is. The NHL's top 10. The Devils pick second. The Yotes moving up to third. And then Kraken, Flyers, and you can see it right there, fifth. And then the Sens will pick seventh, and so on and so forth. Conspiracy theory, guys. Are you subscribing to that? The Montreal Canadiens, it is in Montreal, and I might be. The funny part is somebody was telling me too, like it's on what, July 10th, right? Is the draft, Tony?
July 7th and 8th.
July 7th and 8th. Okay, so why did I think it was July 10th? Someone lied to me then, because someone's like, it's July 10th, which means it's Guy Lafleur's number, and it's an omen. They're gonna win and take their next Guy Lafleur on the number 10. So clearly that was just a flat out lie. I probably should have fact checked it because now that makes absolutely no sense. But do you still subscribe to the fact that it was fixed for the hometown team to get the number 1 overall pick?
No, I don't think it's fixed. I do think it's going to be a fun story. I think for me, it's going to be my first live draft in person because, the world fell apart the last couple of years, so everything's been canceled pretty much. But it's going to be my first live draft in person, and it's going to be cool to see Montreal pick the Montreal guy in Montreal with the first overall pick. One of the things I saw that relates to that goofy Guy Lafleur thing is it's been 51 years since Guy Lafleur was picked. 51 is the number of Shane Wright, so naturally, this is the next coming. Yeah, that's probably what you see. Because I saw it too, and I was like, oh yeah, this is something I got to bring up because it's such a goofy little thing. But hey, you know what? I'm sure if there was some goofy number thing that lined up for the Leafs when Auston Matthers was drafted, everyone would have been all over that too. So kudos to the Habs fans for being a little silly with it.
Well, I mean, Leaf fans are convinced that because Jake Muzzin scored the opening goal in the playoffs, much like he did for the Kings a few years ago, that's an omen that the Maple Leafs are destined to win a cup. So, yeah, there's some conspiracy theories running rampant throughout the NHL. So tell us about it. Shane Wright, he's the consensus number one overall pick on boards. I assume he's also your number one pick on your board. Tell us a little bit about this kid, a little scouting report, I guess, if you will, and perhaps the potential of what he could be.
Yeah, Shane Wright's a really good player. I think he got dogged a little bit for his scoring being down, especially early in the season. But as the season went on, it seemed like every month his scoring rates went up, and it was a steady increase from 1.2 points per game in the first month of the year to basically almost 2 points a game towards the end of the year. So you saw him eventually become the player we thought he was going to be this year, but it did take him a while. And I'll be honest, the fact of the matter is, like, he didn't play last year with the OHL being canceled with the pandemic and everything. So it was a little bit of an awkward situation for him, but this is a player that does so many things the right way. He's so smart at both ends of the ice. And I know there's a lot of Patrice Bergeron comparisons that he's been getting, and I think that's probably a little bit unfair. But Ryan O'Reilly is a perfectly acceptable guy who's not far off, but Patrice Bergeron's been doing it for 100 years, it seems, being the best defensive player in the NHL. So any expectation of that would be unfair. So I think Ryan O'Reilly is the perfect guy to kind of compare him to. Not necessarily a guy that's going to breakaway speed, but he's got some sneaky skill. He'll put some moves on you, dangle a defender and snipe it from distance. Like, he's got a good shot. He's got really good vision. There's nothing that you look at and you're like, this is a big weakness in his game. But you also don't look at his game and go, everything here is elite. There's no tool package where you look at Auston Matthers and he's got the shot, McDavid with the speed, and you look at some of these other first overall picks and you can pick out that one trait that's going to make them special. Shane Wright maybe doesn't have that, other than maybe his decision-making and IQ, but we've seen it before in the NHL where decision-making and IQ can go a long way to making a really good NHL career.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly can. When I look at Shane Wright, I had the pleasure of watching him live. I actually coached against Shane Wright in the CHL Top Prospects games. We ran into each other there, actually.
Yeah.
The first time we actually got to meet in person was at that game. He ended up scoring a goal, but I got to tell you, we did a pretty good job of neutralizing that guy. But I would assume that he still is considered the number one guy for a reason. But in general, when you look at this draft, how would you grade it in terms of strength, I guess, from in the first round, I guess, through the middle rounds? Like, is this a deep draft? Is this a light draft, top heavy? Like, how would you characterize the draft this year?
The grading is hard because I almost feel like I want to give it a C+ and an A- because so many of these guys we're seeing such accelerated development towards the end of the year, it seems, because so many of them missed time last year. I think Shane Wright's a perfect example of that. And you look through up and down the board and you're like, okay, this guy's starting to come along towards the end of the year. This guy's starting to be what we expected. So I think that last year of having it off really affected this draft class. So I could see a world where we kind of come out of this draft and we're like, yeah, wow, like this was kind of a ho-hum draft. No one really became a superstar. And even down the board, you see every year a guy gets drafted in the 20s and he becomes a superstar. And this is a draft that very well could have that, because I think this draft more than any other has so much variance in who's ranked where on public and private boards. I know Will Scout kind of keeps track of a few different public lists and has a variance tool, and it's almost one full deviation from where it was the last 3 years, even though the pandemic was going on those years too. So I think the biggest thing with this draft is, for someone like Brad Lambert, for example, I know myself and a few other people still have him in the top 5. I've seen him at 25 on other lists. I think Denton Matejchuk's another example of that. He's been on top 10 on some lists, and he's in the 30s on others. It's crazy to see how wildly this draft is varying in terms of evaluations. But I think a lot of that has to do with people going, all right, this tool and this tool I value, and if it can come a ways that we've seen with the year off, maybe that development's still there. So it's going to be a weird draft, because I think we're going to get some guys a little bit later that outperform some of the guys picked ahead of them.
You're beaking my captain, by the way, Denton Matejchuk. It's my captain you're talking about. What position group would you say is kind of the deepest in this year's draft?
I'm going to say the defensive group is most intriguing. I don't know if it's the deepest. I think there's a lot of uncertainty everywhere. There's always a ton of wingers. I think wingers is always the easy answer when you want to go to deepest, but the defense group is intriguing because you have guys like Seamus Casey down the board. Kevin Korchinski is another guy who played at the top prospects game. And you're like, there's so much here that if put in the right development system, he could become a top pair defenseman. He could become a number 2 guy or a number 3 guy and really be special. And then there's also the same thing with those guys where you're like, but if they're tried to be shoehorned into something, if you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, this guy could absolutely be nothing and be an AHL guy for 10 years. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this defensive group develops, because down the list, Vladimir Grudin, a Russian kid, like I said, Seamus Casey, Sam Rinzel, a high school kid that people are really high on, Owen Pickering, a really raw prospect from the Dub. There's all these guys seemingly at the end of the first round that some people have a little bit higher, and one of them or two of them are going to turn out to be something really special, I think.
My question for you, Tony, here is, I mean, this might be something better to ask after the draft is done, but looking at the rankings right now, is there somebody, a team outside of the top 5 that could land potentially a big surprise player? Maybe something that's not getting as much love as they should right now.
I think Matthew Savoy is the ultimate wild card in this draft. He's top 5 on some boards. He's top 10 on other boards. I think he was at 17 on Craigslist today. He's a really varied prospect, and the biggest reason I think for that is he's 5'9" flat, and that's maybe generous. I think he's a guy that's a little bit undersized, but the skill level, the pace, the ability to kind of push the game towards the offensive zone is really special with this kid. So I think there is this chance we get a Braden Point-esque player out of him. But there's also the chance that a coach doesn't give him that opportunity to be the player he is and tries to shoehorn him into being something he's not. And he doesn't get to use that agility. He doesn't get to use that daring kind of cerebral tactic and puck skill that he has to kind of cut to the middle and get some shots off, draw defenders, and make a good pass. He does so many things well offensively that I think there could be a special player here. And because of his size, I could see him getting drafted outside the top 10, and that'd be a shame because – I mean, we saw Cole Caulfield go off in the second half of this year once he got under a coach that really let him thrive with the skill that he has. I think Savoy could be a really similar prospect.
Yeah, he's an intriguing one. I got to watch both he and Savoy when they were younger at the was it 2019 at the Canada, was it the Canada Winter Canada Games out in Red Deer, and I was to be honest with you, more impressed with Savoy than I was with Shane Wright. But obviously Wright's kind of filled out that frame and has become a prototypical body for, a guy who projects better into the pros. So that's like, when you talk about the body, that's the big difference there. But the skill and the IQ is there for Matthew Savoy. So I'm with you. If he ends up kind of falling outside the top 10 or top 15, that can end up being a steal for some team. It almost feels like that's at the end of the day, he's going to end up in a place like, I don't know, maybe Florida, and just excel because they seem to do really well with undersized dudes who just go out and rip it and score all the time. All right. I'm going to ask you one question, and this may be a real toughie for you to answer at this point, since we don't really know exactly where the Leafs are going to pick. But if you had to put together a mock draft today, who do you think who would you be having the Leafs select in the first round of the mock draft?
So I'll give you a couple names because there's a few guys. And the first one I'm going to give you is Brad Lambert, a guy that's been projected at the top of the board for a lot of the year. Coming into the year, a lot of people said this is the guy that can challenge Shane Wright if there's anybody. And he's had a really unproductive season. I don't want to say he's had a bad season because I don't think he's had a bad season. I think he's had a season where he's played against men. He's been pushed around a little bit. He's been shoved up and down the lineup in a crazy situation. He got traded to a team that is a beer league team at best. And it's really weird to kind of see him be the only driver of play on that team. And he's done a really good job of generating all sorts of the advanced metrics, all the transition metrics, the expected goals, the ability to get shots on net and drive play that way. Everything looks great. But when you look at his elite prospects page, his stats don't really add up to that. So I think in terms of at least the situation, we're looking at a guy like Lucas Raymond a few years ago who was not producing at a high level in the SHL playing against men because he was up and down the lineup. He never really got the top 6 minutes that he was deserving of. And to Brad Lambert's credit, he has gotten some top 6 minutes, but Oftentimes he starts out on the second line, plays a few shifts on the fourth line, looks for half a period on the third line, gets one shift on the power play, and then he's back on the fourth line. So he's getting moved around in the lineup throughout one game at such an excessive rate that he has the talent to be this really high-end player. He has some of the best tools in the entire draft class, and that's not really something that's a hot take. Everyone agrees on that. It's just, can he put it together? And I think when you actually watch this guy in detail and look for him doing the process, kind of following through with what he needs to do to create offense, he does all of that. So the scoring will come, I think, but he's a guy that I think could fall to the Leafs because he's tumbling down draft boards, similar to the way Aatu Ratu did last year. But I don't I don't think those situations are similar because Ratu was given every opportunity. He was on a silver platter. Hey, do this. And there was it's kind of the similar things. He was generating a lot of the metrics, but not scoring, but he had those minutes to try to score. Brad Lambert hasn't really had that. So I think that's the difference there. But man, if he falls to the Leafs pick, say in the late 20s or hopefully 32, then I mean, that's a great pickup for them. But a guy that I really like later in the draft that's kind of been up and down boards is Kevin Korchinski. If there's any way the Leafs can get a guy like this, he's a guy that I think Leafs fans would love in a lot of ways because he plays that transition game, pushes the pace, skates really well, makes a great breakout pass, and he shows flashes of really nice defensive tendencies. I think there are some issues with his defensive game at times. Sometimes he can overcommit and stuff, but this is a guy that I think now with the roster the Leafs are starting to have, you can put it in the lineup. I think I don't want to compare him directly to Jake Gardiner, but there's some of the same tendencies there. And with the Leafs, I know that might be a scare people. You're going to scare people. I know I'm scaring people a little bit, but think of it this way. Imagine you had Jake Gardiner still on the Leafs, the Jake Gardiner we used to have, but he's on your third pair now, not on your top pair, not trying to play all the minutes that he was playing on the second pair. You can shelter him away. And I think Korchinski's a guy, like, if you put him on the Leafs lineup where they've shown the ability to develop defensemen and shown the ability to kind of carry guys through, I think you can get what we all hope Jake Gardiner could have been. And that's a really interesting player because he did do so many things well, but obviously with the glaring defensive issues at the worst moments of all time. So if you can get a guy that does all the things Jake Gardiner did without those big moment lapses, I think that's a really awesome player.
All right, talking about a 50-point scorer in Jake Gardiner. So I guess if you're getting that offense and he's not making the boneheaded mistakes that make you really scratch your head, yeah, all right, that's a decently productive player. I agree with you. You didn't bring up my boy Tristan Luneau, though. What's going on?
Oh, Mikey, we've talked about Tristan Luneau. I think he's going to be an NHL defenseman. I don't know how much potential he has in terms of being anywhere up the lineup. I think he's a guy that's similar to Logan Stanley that the Jets drafted a few years ago, and we've seen him in the lineup the last couple of years, and you're like, okay, yeah, he serves a purpose. He's there, and it's fine if he's your sixth defenseman. But I think this year we saw with the Jets, when he had to play up the lineup a little bip more, that's not necessarily a guy you want to rely on up the lineup. So I think when you look at Tristan Luneau versus Denton Mateychuk, who's kind of been up and down boards, Korchinski, who I mentioned, even a guy like Seamus Casey or Kalliodellius, the Swedish defenseman, you go, they can kind of do more. They have that potential to go a little higher. So with the Leafs only having the 1 first-round pick, do you want to take some risk? And I think the Leafs have shown the ability to scout out and take risks on players like Nick Robertson. Rodion Amirov comes to mind, despite the health issues he's currently facing, and all these other players where you look at the pick at the time and you're like, well, there's some risk there, but the Leafs seem to have a good scouting staff. So if they think one of these guys can develop the way that they can, their upside is far higher than a guy like Tristan Luneau, even if Luneau's certainty is pretty much like, I have no doubt he's going to be a third pairing NHL defenseman, but I kind of also have no doubt he's not going to be more than that.
Well, I don't like to hear that because that's my guy. You know, I coached him in the CHL Top Prospects game. He's just a hell of a dude.
And that's just it. And I think he's a guy that if he does fall out of the first round and some team, like say Detroit snags him with one of their second round picks early in the second round after getting someone like Frank Nazar in the top 10, like that's a great
value. I mean, second round pick, if you're getting a bona fide third pair defenseman,
exactly,
second round pick, you're happy.
Exactly. So I think that's kind of the route that I'd take with Tristan Luneau, because if you take a little bit more of a risk in round one, especially early on, you grab Luneau and go, okay, we get a little security with him and then get the risk with the other player. And I think Luneau is going to be a guy, like I said, he's going to play NHL minutes. He's going to be a solid NHLer, I think, but he's a guy that I think fits a role. And if you try to take him out of that role, we've seen other guys get taken out of their roles and not really be able to excel.
Curious where did Craig Button have him in his latest rankings? Do you know?
Not off by hand. I don't remember.
He told me that he was going to be moved up in his next rankings, and I got to see if that indeed happened. Maybe I'll shoot you a note when we're done here, and I'll take a peek. But why don't we wrap things up here, fellas? Great show, good win for the Buds, good win for the boys. Everyone's heading out to Tampa Bay, feeling good about themselves. Do they come home with it all finished up, Tony? I need a prediction because you're not going to be on the show tomorrow. Dave,
Yes.
you save it for tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes.
They finish it in 6. We don't need to worry about anything crazy, and Leaf Land is happy for once.
All right. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Go check out Tony's work. I'm sure he's going to have tons of stuff with the draft ramping up right now. Go check him out on Twitter at the Tony Ferrari, writes for the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated as well. That's going to do it for us here today on the pod. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasting platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. And follow Tony at the Tony Ferrari on Twitter. And also check us out and subscribe on YouTube. That would be great, gratefully appreciated if you went and did that. We're on a road to 1,000, and we're hovering 720, 730-ish. So once we get to 1,000, we're giving away a jersey. So you're going to want to subscribe and make sure that you're eligible for said jersey. We want to get there before the Maple Leafs start round 2. That's our goal. I know it's lofty, especially if it ends on Thursday like Tony's guaranteeing at this point.
No, let's not guarantee anything.
That's what I heard.
No.
Hey,
I have
Barkley guaranteed it.
I have confidence, not a guarantee. But
Yeah,
I do also have Leno's ranking on Craigslist. He was number 30 on the list. So I think that's a perfectly acceptable spot for him. I think that's right around where he'll probably go, and a good spot to take him, I think.
I just need to let the people also know, and I really hate to be a downer this late in the podcast, but you also had confidence that the Blue Jays were going to close it out tonight.
Are we really going to do this?
And that didn't happen. Dave, I got a message from this guy. I was like, hey, we're going to record in a little bit. Dave's on his way home from Real Sports. You still good? He's like, yep, just watching the Blue Jays close out the game. Aaron Judge, 3-run homer, bottom of the 9th, game over. Yeah.
In fairness,
yeah,
the Blue Jays don't exist on the Leafs playoff game day. That's
fair
all.
Enough. Fair enough. The boys of summer. The summer's not here quite yet. The Maple Leafs still in charge. That will do it for us here today, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow to tee up and preview game numero 6 in Tampa Bay. We're riding high after a big-time Game 5 win to take a 3-2 series lead. We'll chat with you guys tomorrow, but until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On.